How's it going? I'm Jair Lozano, and I did my presentation over Sedgwick, a New England tale. Okay, let's get started. The biographical info about Sedgwick. Her name was Catherine Marine Sedgwick. She was born in Stockbridge, Massachusetts on December 28th of 1789. She was unmarried. She had no children, no husbands. Her dad's side of the family was from New England. Her first novel was actually uh, a New England tale. A little more about her. Her first novel, which was this one, it was published anonymously. So, like, it had no trace back to her. She wrote a lot of novels, of course. She was super popular in American, um, in like the literature. One of the most well known of her time. She was active in abolishment and like movements. She was into church a lot, and you could tell by like this novel. Um, and she was into like the mental health. Her brother and her mother, they had also those issues, and they both passed away by those issues. She died July 30, 1867, which was the same year her last novel was released. It's okay. So the plot. It started off with Ellington. It was a couple. They were married. They were two completely different people. Um, the missus, she was more nice. She was she was into like Christianity. She was into God. Like she would study the Bible and stuff. And it was a lot different from the guy, which was the he was more like strict. He liked to be like more like he would show off a lot. They had money, and they got to a point where they didn't really have a lot of money, but he still wanted that look, so he would still dress the part. And she would tell him like, "We don't have to do this. We can just be normal. Like, you don't have to show off. You know, like you can still be a good person without having wealth." So yeah, he was completely different. He was a lot more strict. And they would bump heads, but she would really just she would in a way like she would come back to him with niceness. Like she wouldn't fight him the way he would. Um, he was he was a lot like his sisters. He had three sisters. He was loud. He was a leader. Um, what else? And yeah, she was very connected with God. She was spiritual. So later, they both passed away, and they had a daughter named Jane. And she was left alone, of course. She was uh, considered like an orphan now. And the three sisters of the father were the ones that had to choose like who was going to keep her, and that was Mrs. Wilson. She decided to bring her into her family. But the thing about his sisters, were that they were just like the brother. So they were all very like mean, strict. Like they weren't the way um, they weren't the way um, that she was. And Jane came out like her mom. Jane was into God, into the Bible. Like she would carry it around. And after her mom passed away, she actually took her Bible and she would keep it close to her. So she was way different from her father, and her father was very much like her sister. So they would bump heads, of course. So it was hard for Jane to adapt again to someone like her father. Um, and pretty much throughout the novel, what Jane tries to do, like she tries to like break free from that. Of course, like she doesn't want to be with someone who isn't like her, because they bring in like all of this energy, and it's not good energy. It's like negative energy. And Jane and her mom were very spiritual. They always carried a lot of good energy in them. So the major characters are uh, Ellington. Is gonna be like his wife, Jane, the three sisters. There's Mary, which was pretty much like her friend. It was like a friend of Jane's, which she stayed with as well. Also Wilson, which was the one that took her in. Miss uh, Miss Winthrop. There's also a lot of another list of characters. Mr. Lloyd, Mrs. Lloyd, Mr. Elwin, Penn. He was also in the Robert, Rebecca, Elwin, Mr. Everston, Erskine, and Edward. Economic era. So around the time this novel was created, the economy wasn't that big. The economy wasn't as big as it is today, or in history. It was small. It was largely agriculture based, because back then there was a lot more farming, and that was pretty much the way America was going. The prices and the production was very high around that time, and cotton was big in the U.S., or soon to be U.S., and slavery was growing as well because of all the plantations that were growing, and the production of agriculture. Cultural. During this time, the novel was made. America was fighting to be their own country, of course. The era of literature, the era in this literature was the age of enlightenment, which it focused on freedom of speech, equality of press, and religious tolerance, which has all of those three things are in this novel. Definitely freedom, definitely religious tolerance, and within the 13 colonies, this led to the American Revolution and the United States of America. So that all was happening around the time this novel was made. Historical moments around the time that this novel was made. Thomas Jefferson was elected the first president. Louisiana Purchase was made, so the U.S. was expanding. Lewis and Clark set off on their journey, which was also it was a big moment for America, and they declared a war on England, to fight for their freedom. Symbolism. There's a few symbols in this novel. Her mother's Bible, or Bibles in general. This was a symbol of comfort for Jane after losing her mother. So, like I said, she went to a family that didn't necessarily want her, and she was very close with her mom. Like I said, she was a reflection of her mom, and that's kind of what helped her get through like the tough time she had, and having that Bible by her side and that spiritual like connection with her mom was huge for her. So that was a big symbol. The three sisters, I would make them a symbol as well, because they were very negative. They didn't really want Jane. They hated the fact that they had to take care of her, and that it was kind of on them. They wish, that was never an option. The money and wealth, I would make that a symbol as well, because that I would make that a symbol of evil, because that changed like people. That changes people, and in this book it did. Like I said, her father was always like around wealth, and like he would change the way he was, and his sisters were a exact reflection of that as well. Like they all wanted wealth. They thought that was like the main, like, the they thought that was the ultimate goal at the end of the day, which truly wasn't. Jane and her mother were on the right path, with God, and having a connection. That was pretty much a lot better than wealth. So I would make wealth an evil. Literary devices. Simile. There was a simile. I'll mind everything you tell me just as much as it was spoken to me right from heaven. Imagery. He turned from the door and raised his hands and faded his glistening and faded eyes glistening with the gathered tears. That makes you, like picture, like crying tears. Repetition. But your godness to me, God bless you, Edward, God bless you. A metaphor, I shall risk taking the fire if you dare risk giving it. Themes. There could be multiple messages found in this novel. One would be that you don't have to be like everyone else. And this could be seen through Jane, because she is like her mother. She is very different from everyone else, because she is with Mr. Elton's family. So she stands out, of course, because everyone from her father's side of the family are very much different than her and her mother. So they stand out, but that's not a bad thing that they're different. In reality, they're in a better place. They're in a better spot than the rest of the family, because they are all very negative. Having a close connection with God is a very powerful tool. That this novel also presents that having a spiritual connection is very much more powerful than wealth or any of those. A tool to keep God close would be the Bible, which is also presented in this novel multiple times, all throughout the story. Evaluation of the novel. Overall, the novel, in my opinion, it's in the middle. It's a mixture. The plot was kind of hard to find. It was kind of like weird. It had a lot of like twists and turns. I was a little confused with like the way everything was going. Like it would just bring in other characters, and it was kind of confusing. Her journey was interesting, like the way everything played out. Like at the end, you can after reading, you can make the connections, and you can see how everything was. Like I said, there was a lot of characters. And then after, of course, I researched reviews over the novel, and people were kind of on the same boat as me. There were some that really liked it and recommended it, and there was others that weren't really a fan of it because of how the plot was, or just how it was kind of like. I read a review where it said it was too focused on morals, but I feel like that was the point of this reading. So but yeah, I read some of the reviews, and they were in the middle as well. Is it worth reading? I would say if you're a fan of early American literature, yes. Because it's a great example of what was going on around that time period. It's a great example of it. This book is definitely tells you, like, gives you a visual of what was going around. I give an 8 out of 10. Personally, I did like it, but it was a bit confusing. But I feel like once you read all of it, you'll connect all the points. But yeah, overall, I like the novel. I'm not much of a reader, but yeah, and that's it. All right.